Hello and welcome to the 15th Annual George A. Roeper Festival of Senior Projects. At a first meeting with prospective families, I always describe the experience here at Roeper to be one where students have the opportunity to discover and pursue their own passions. They are handed the reins, encouraged to try new things and find what they love, essentially carve and explore their own pathways. A core tenet of the Roeper philosophy reminds us that we should allow students to participate in the shaping of their own destinies. Senior projects at Roeper are by no means required, but viewed as capstone projects that students choose to engage in. They've chosen to embark on this independent journey and then share their findings and creative energies with you, their community. And so here we are. I'm very proud of this group of artists, athletes, actors, writers, scientists, philanthropists, and musicians. They're a young group with an already long story to tell, full of experiences that have shaped who they are today. I hope that when they talk about their days at Roeper and their days growing up in a school that has afforded them opportunities to explore anything and everything, they'll fondly remember this experience, just as we will fondly remember them. Thank you again for joining us this evening to celebrate the class of 2021 and their exceptional, very important work. Enjoy.
A very long climate project. Alright, so I've broken my project up into 3 parts. My senior project, where I'm going to explain my project and talk about what I've done for it. Our initiatives, where I'm going to talk about what AVLCP is working on, and thank yous and recognitions, which I feel is fairly self-explanatory. For those of you who know me, you know that environmentalism is a huge thing for me. Ever since I was little, I've always loved the planet and its creatures. When I was in 6th grade and we were doing orientation, someone started talking about how when we were seniors, if we wanted to, we could do this awesome project about whatever we wanted and we could change the world. I decided right then and there that I was going to be doing a senior project and it was going to be about saving the planet. I just wasn't sure how. Over the years, my forays into environmentalism grew far beyond picking up trash on the playground during recess. Doing Sierra Club at Roeper helped teach me how to become an activist and how one can impact their own communities and actually go about trying to make a difference. It was when we started campaigning to get water bottle fillers at school that the idea really took shape for me. After we had succeeded, there was a real tangible change for the better. Watching the number of plastic bottles tick up and up on the counters and machines throughout the school, I was proud. I knew that every single water bottle saved was in part because of me. That's when I began to understand that the biggest impact any individual or a small group of individuals can have isn't on the whole world, but on their own communities. And by impacting our own communities, those changes spread and touch more and more and more people, and the cycle continues, growing ever larger. Then, the summer before 11th grade, my good friend, then senior, Avery Long, sends me an email asking if I would like to help him with his project. He wanted to create a group to make Roeper more environmentally friendly. The first thing that I said to him was, "Hey, you stole my idea!" And the second was, "Of course, I'd love to help, that sounds awesome." And it was indeed awesome. I believe that one of the most important things in life is standing up and fighting for what you believe in. As mentioned previously, I have an affinity for nature and am passionate about the environment. It is so important that we protect our planet, not only for ourselves, but for the millions of other species that inhabit it. After all, there is no planet B. One thing that makes Roeper so special is that it allows and encourages students to follow through on their passions and make their mark not only on our school community, but on the world. Through AVLCP, I am working every day to create an impact on my community and to fight for the world that I believe in. A Very Long Climate Project is an organization that was created last year by now alum Avery Long. The purpose of AVLCP is to make our school more environmentally friendly by taking on various initiatives. Our goal is to create both immediate short-term improvements and long-term sustainable change. Additionally, I really wanted to not only put in place a structure that would enable members of our community to take eco-friendly action for a long time to come, but also to create a framework that would help students learn how to go about pursuing their own passions, fighting for what they believe in, and creating the changes they wanted to see. AVLCP is an organization that consists of both middle and upper schoolers. We have 3 meeting times: upper school class, a middle school class, and an after-school club. The purpose of this is to give students a variety of options for when they are able to meet so that we increase participation beyond just who has room in their busy after-school lives or a space in their full schedules. The classes in the club are basically the same thing, they just differ in meeting times. Next year, I would like to combine the middle and upper school class so that upper schoolers are able to act as a mentor to help middle schoolers who need it develop their ideas, as well as to increase collaboration between the 2 groups. At the beginning of their involvement, AVLCPers choose at least one initiative. They can come up with their own and start an entirely new one, continue an ongoing initiative, or join someone else in working on theirs. The idea behind this is to engage every student in an aspect of the work that they are passionate about and to allow them to really run with their ideas. While initiative work is largely solo, we meet as a group to offer help, ideas, and support to one another while we all work collectively towards achieving our goal of a more environmentally friendly school. So, if Avery started AVLCP last year, and if AVLCP is a multi-student organization where members of AVLCP choose and work on their own initiatives, then you must be wondering, what exactly was my senior project? My senior project was to run AVLCP and ensure its continuation. I was essentially the project manager. I was responsible for overseeing everything, monitoring the project progress, organizing the project, trying to keep everything on track and running smoothly, helping and guiding people when they needed it, working with AVLCPers to ensure the project's overall success, and any other responsibilities that came with running the project. I've done a lot this year. The things I've done fall under 5 main categories: preparation, organization, publicity, day-to-day running, and project evaluation. Over the summer, I had many meetings with those who had been members of AVLCP last year to figure out where we had left off exactly in our sudden and chaotic transition to online, as well as to talk about the future of the overall project and what shape it would take under my leadership. I also had many long meetings with Dan to talk about how the school year would work, things that needed to get done, any advice he had for me, any concerns that either of us had, and what we each wanted to see from the project. I talked to Hale a few times to ensure that our class was a go and that it was on the schedule and in the course catalog. I made a syllabus for the class explaining how AVLCP works, what the class was all about, and included ideas for initiatives. I had last year's AVLCP members create videos of themselves offering advice to new members. I created a welcome PowerPoint for the first days of school that talked a bit about what AVLCP was, helped set everyone up with the tools they needed for the project. Of course, I also submitted my senior project proposal, and then afterwards a second extended project proposal with the necessary changes, and actually got my project approved. I created and organized a Discord server for both the class and the club, which I later combined so that people would have a space to communicate with each other whenever they needed or wanted to, and collaborate on their initiatives. The Discord server was reorganized twice after initial organization, as I found what worked and didn't work so well. AVLCP has a Google Drive so that all documents pertaining to the project and to various initiatives can be readily accessible to anyone. I organized that Google Drive, reorganized it, and made sure it was always up to date as things changed. I also created a few documents that organized the important information into one easily accessible and understandable place, such as a list of all initiatives with summaries explaining what they were about, status update documents, and a document explaining how everything was organized. Publicity was important because I wanted to get as many people involved as possible, as well as to inform the community about all the awesome things that we were doing. I prepped for and ran a spot at the Club Expo. I talked to anyone who would listen about my project and our various initiatives, and tried to spread the word. I even wrote an article for the school newsletter on AVLCP, what we were trying to accomplish, and how to join. I led the class and ran club meetings. I helped students figure out what initiatives they wanted to do and or how to go about accomplishing their goals when they needed. I checked in with people on the status of their initiatives and on what needed to get done, usually offering feedback, whether it was a suggestion or just encouragement and acknowledgement of a job well done. I tried to work closely with students on their initiatives while also giving them the space to accomplish and figure out things on their own. I did a fair bit of problem solving, whether it was with others for their initiatives or working out kinks in the overall project and making the necessary adjustments. I worked to make sure that the project was able to transition relatively smoothly as we went from in-person and to online and back again several times. I, of course, also exchanged emails and had meetings with anyone I needed to throughout the year for overall project stuff as well as for any specific initiative stuff that was necessary. The running of ABLCP required constant evaluation and reevaluation of how things were going. I tried to always pay attention and to make note of what was working and what wasn't, as well as any changes or solutions I might try. I did check-ins with Dan fairly frequently, usually just as a few minutes after school to talk about how we each thought the project was going and any concerns we had or ideas we wanted to try. I also tried to check in with all of the ABLCPers every so often to see what they thought about the project, what they liked, didn't like, and anything they wanted to change or ideas they wanted to implement. I'm sure you're going to hear this a lot tonight, but by far my biggest challenge was the pandemic. It impacted so many aspects of my project. It made it really hard to figure out where we left off after the chaos in spring last year. Things kept either getting canceled or we couldn't do them in the first place because of COVID. So many things were indefinitely on pause. It also impacted businesses outside of Roeper. People took longer to reply to emails or get us information we needed because things were just closed. Within the school, we kept moving back and forth from in-person and online. It was hard to get the word out about anything, and most of the student body was just gone. And the all-school newsletter got so long, any information could get buried in a sea, and not everyone read them. Those quick in-person meetings could turn into long, convoluted email chains, and the dynamic of everything was just different. The key to overcoming these challenges is a lot of hard work, flexibility, patience, and understanding. I worked hard to find the best solutions I could and to get past whatever hurdles COVID had put in my way. I was flexible. I understood that things couldn't be the way they always were. I knew that chances were that things would change throughout the year and a lot of things would fall apart. I knew I would have to roll with the punches and make sure that my project could too. I had to be patient. Everything was harder this year, took longer this year. Everything was always uncertain. More importantly, though, I had to be understanding. I understood that this would be a hard year to get things done. I understood that this would be a hard year on people and that they would have a lot on their plate, task-wise but also emotionally. I understood that things might be chaotic. I understood that things would always be uncertain. Vitally, though, I understood that I had a lot on my plate and that I was doing the best I could, and that was all anyone could expect of me, all I could expect from myself. And that made a world of difference. Throughout the process of this project, I learned a lot. Not just about doing this sort of thing, but about myself. I learned that the same system that worked for 8 people in the past won't necessarily work for 20. I learned that I need to delegate my work and that I'm not superhuman. It took a little too long to figure that one out if you ask me. Could have used that a few years ago. I learned that running something like this is a lot more work than you think it's going to be. I learned that I am not always the most patient when it comes to red tape. I learned that when you're doing a project with other people, it is always going to take longer than you think it is, and you need to give yourself a fair chunk of wiggle room. I learned that there is no failure if you learn from the experience, and just because something is a dead end doesn't mean it's not a success. If something isn't working out, just sometimes I need to stop being stubborn and find an alternative way to accomplish my goals. I learned that just because someone isn't doing something the way I would do it, that doesn't mean they're not doing a great job. I learned that sometimes my bossiness pays off, and sometimes I need to let go and trust my teammates. I already knew that communication was key, but I definitely learned that lesson all over again this year. I learned that just because you aren't where you originally wanted to be doesn't mean you aren't in a good place. I learned that running a big project like this feels kind of like being the CEO of my own tiny little company. I learned that once I set my mind to something, my sheer willpower becomes a force of nature in its own right. And lastly, I learned that this is definitely something I want to continue doing throughout my life. Well, what criteria would I have to meet to be successful? I set out to run ABLCP, to ensure its continuation, to engage students in environmental work, and to help people create the changes they wanted to see. I went into the year knowing we might not finish anything. not just because of the nature of this year, but because of the nature of the project. Ultimately, I knew that I would need to consider this project a success. All I would have to do is to have tried my very hardest to achieve my goals. I set out to do more things than I have accomplished, sure, but at the end of the day, I think I've accomplished more than I set out to do. I'm so proud of my project and of the work that AVLCP has done. The project, in my mind, has been above and beyond success, and I am so excited to see where it goes in the future. Last year, AVLCP worked in tandem with the middle school student government to get more bike racks for the school in order to promote and increase the ease of biking to school as an alternative to driving, in order to attempt to reduce greenhouse gas emissions within the Roeper community. We've been emailing back and forth with David to check in on the progress of this initiative. The bike racks were approved by the school's facilities committee and are in this year's budget. They will likely be installed sometime during the fall. AVLCP is working to get Roeper certified as a green school. Michigan Green Schools focus on educating students how to be more environmentally conscious by implementing energy saving and recycling programs, community outreach opportunities, and general environmentalist activity. In order to become a green school, we need to be doing 10 of the 22 possible activities. We are so far successfully doing 6. We have a recycling program put in place. We now have a no idling sign in the parking lot. We have an environmental science class. We have an established student organization that participates in environmental activities. We celebrate Earth Day, and we have a whiteboard with environmental updates to educate the community about what's going on. AVLCP is also working to get Roeper a LEED certification, which focuses on environmentally friendly building infrastructure. More specifically, since we are an already existing building, we will be focused on operations and maintenance. There are a boatload of requirements, steps, and complexities, so I won't get into that now, but AVLCP is still researching and compiling information into an easily accessible and understandable document, because who wants to sort through 80 pages, and that's just one PDF, every time you're trying to get some information about the project. AVLCP is trying to create a community garden at Roeper. This would have a few effects. Firstly, planting plants is good for the environment. Secondly, we can use our garden to teach adults and children about sustainable gardening. Additionally, we could use it as an opportunity to get younger kids involved in environmental projects by helping us take care of it. Finally, the garden would also incorporate habitat for native Michigan flora and fauna, which would help to preserve species endangered by habitat loss, i.e., butterflies and bees, because who doesn't like butterflies? AVLCP has been researching and compiling information on native plants, prioritizing and selecting specific plants from our list, identifying areas around the Birmingham campus as candidates for planting, which we've narrowed down to one or both of the terraced plots and an area adjacent to the dance room, creating a spreadsheet for needed materials, and organizing volunteers to maintain the garden. We are currently engaged in active discussions with the facilities committee to get our project approved. AVLCP has been trying to get a composting system at Roeper to deal with yard and food waste. The city of Birmingham picks up composting along with its usual weekly trash pickups from the beginning of school until mid-December. This means that as long as Roeper separates its compost, it will be composted for free at a waste management center. Since this is done at a waste management plant, we won't have to deal with the smell or maintenance of a giant pile of compost on the upper school campus. We've been doing research into composting and how to make it possible at Roeper. We've looked into how the city picks up compost requirements, what can and can't be composted, etc. We are currently coordinating with the faculty to submit a proposal to the Birmingham Facilities Committee. We have been looking into finding ways to incorporate the use of solar energy on the Birmingham campus. Unfortunately, through our emailings with Brian Wilmers, Roeper's architect, we discovered that we are unable to have solar panels on our building. While the roof can sustain the weight of solar panels, both the maintenance and space requirements to make this possible makes this an impossible endeavor at current. Foot traffic has to be kept to a minimum due to the rubber membrane roofing, and we do not have enough roof access and safety capabilities. Additionally, we do not have the space in the building for the necessary equipment and are unable to expand due to the city's zoning ordinance and our special land use permit. All is not lost, though. AVLCP has been doing some research into the concept of solar gardens to offset Roeper's energy use with renewable energy. Consumers Energy owns several solar panel fields and has a program in which we could pay to run and maintain a certain number of solar panels, which we can match with the energy intake of our building. And essentially we pay for the clean energy to be put into the grid. It is being used, but not necessarily by us, and that kind of offsets our dirty energy. Last year, we were working on getting an Energy Star rating for the Birmingham campus. It was almost finished with a final walkthrough scheduled for 3 days after school went online. We are still trying to finish this and get our Energy Star rating. However, COVID has been an issue. We have emailed back and forth and had meetings with Charlie, our guy at Consumers Energy. Hopefully this can be finished next year, though by now we also need to input more recent data. While the benchmarking is unfinished, it turns out that we actually have a pretty efficient building relative to other buildings like ours, so that's awesome. Consumers Energy had a program in which students could conduct an energy audit of their school, and the people at Consumers would teach us how to do it and check our work. However, while starting the first steps to getting Roeper involved, we were informed that the program is now, quote, transitioning and may exist in some other format in the future, end quote. The program manager has kindly offered us their programming materials and curriculum, so we're now considering how to utilize that next year. Currently, there is no administrative level structure to work towards environmental sustainability at Roeper, and while the school does have an environmental policy, it is ineffective and places too much responsibility on the head of school. Last year, Avery was working closely with David and the rest of ABLCP to create an administrative level environmental sustainability committee that would address the school's environmental concerns with representation across the school community. We are continuing our work on this policy. This year, Roeper welcomed new sustainability coordinator Jen Carlson to the fold. ABLCP is currently engaged in conversations with her about what this policy might look like and what changes might be made to the original document now that we have this position. Right now, with COVID, the school has gone almost paperless. We are working to determine whether it would be beneficial to continue this trend even after COVID is no longer an issue. By no means are we suggesting a paper ban. I love it when the hallways are lined with art and posters as much as the next person, but we could possibly continue things like online textbooks and virtual homework assignments and tests. A lot of research has gone into the pros and cons of this, such as effects on the environment, on students, on teachers, and on the school. As of right now, a student survey and administrative survey concerning paper usage have both been made and are ready to send out electronically, of course, when we get the chance. At the Birmingham campus, we decided to look into ways to reduce the waste that is coming out of it. Unfortunately, after trading many emails for a long time with the necessary people, we've discovered there isn't much that we can do. A lot of the plastic wrapping is for health concerns, and reusable silverware and plates are not feasible because we don't have the room for a dishwasher. One of our 6th graders is creating a recycled art installation and using it as a way to educate the Roeper community about pollution in the oceans and how the choices we make as consumers affect wildlife. She made a black wave as to represent contamination and oil spills in the water, and utilized pieces of trash as a symbol of pollution in the oceans. In the water, there is a turtle covered in plastic wrap and paper to represent the way turtles are dying every day because of litter of the ocean. Along with that piece, she has written up a blurb to explain her art, what it represents, and to educate the Roeper community about the problem. Last year, ABLCP planned and held the 12th annual Roeper Benefit Talent Show to raise money to offset the school's carbon emissions by donating to Cool Effect. The night was a huge success. We raised over $2,000. However, when COVID hit, all of that money was left in a lockbox in a locker at school. This year, we were finally able to finalize the count and work with the business office to donate it all. The money that we raised was used to preserve forests in Alaska, plant trees internationally, and build clean cook stoves in Honduras. This year, we'd intended to do a 13th annual Roeper Benefit Talent Show, much like this one. However, COVID got in the way. We have been working really hard to find a solution. Our first attempt at creating a video failed because of the difficulty of promoting ACT submissions this year. We haven't given up yet, though. We are currently trying to pull something together using various videos from this year and last, with people's permission, of course, to create a 13th annual Roeper Benefit Talent Show Nostalgia Edition. If we can pull this off, more details will be coming your way shortly. We are creating an ABLCP website. We hope to use it to gain exposure, which helps us continue the project in the future, to make information about our initiatives available to the community, and maybe someday to raise money for our initiatives through an online shop. This year, the website has undergone a ton of work. All of the information has been put up, the design is still incomplete, but most pages are done, and there's been a lot of troubleshooting and problem solving, and in some parts, complete redoing. To visit the website, head on over to ablcp.us.2. It's pretty cool. First and foremost, thank you to everyone who is or has been a part of ABLCP. This project could not happen without your involvement, and it makes me so happy to see that there are others in the Roeper community who are passionate about the project and the work that we do. You have done amazing work this year, and you all deserve a round of applause. Be proud of your accomplishments. I know I'm proud of you. I was so lucky to be able to share my project with such a great group of people, and I take comfort in knowing that you will be there to keep it going in my absence. Thank you so much, and I couldn't have done it without you. Advisor extraordinaire. Thank you so much, Dan. You've been a wonderful advisor, mentor, and friend throughout this whole process and throughout my time at Roeper. I am grateful for all of the long chats or quick check-ins, whether it's about the project or just how my year has been so far. I know you have put so much time and thought into the project, and from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate that. I know I'm leaving my project in good hands, and I can't wait to see where it goes under your leadership. Thank you to everyone who has worked with us on our various initiatives, put up with our relentless emails and constant questions, or helped us to gain the exposure we needed, or offered ideas, solutions, or even just support when we needed it, when I needed it. I am so grateful to everyone who has helped us to get where we are today. From the bottom of my heart, again, thank you guys all so much. Thank you all for your time, and on to the next presentation.
Hey, so I decided to do my senior project on my progress as I prepare for a career in real estate. So this project went over my involvement in getting my realtor's license and also my involvement in investment. So my project really started in the summer of 2018 when I first became interested in real estate. I had seen a couple of videos on YouTube from some kind of questionable individuals, but nonetheless, it had piqued my interest and I had decided to actually delve into the literature, and it sounded like something that interested me. So I reached out to a local broker, Jim Schaefer, who many of you may know through our Roeper community, and we set up an unpaid internship for the first summer in 2018. So most of this summer was spent learning, doing odd jobs, sending a mail campaign, putting together signs, cleaning, just doing anything that anyone else in the office didn't want to do. But also there was a lot of learning experiences in there. I got to shadow an agent as they were doing some cold calling. I got to shadow a buyer's agent as we went to a new construction with the client. It was great. And that summer I had to bike to the realtor's office every single day because I didn't have a car. I was 15, so yeah. So while the first summer was mostly learning, the second summer it saw me putting in some consistent hours organizing the Jim Schaefer and Associates database, and yeah, I was putting together more mail campaigns, a lot more responsibility as I was coming in uh, for longer and doing actual work there. So that was fun. Um, that was probably my busiest summer there. And the third summer was COVID, so the actual in-person office involvement was limited, but I was still able to run quite a few errands, deliver cookies to referrals, um, deliver gifts, yeah, anything that involved no contact. I was putting up and taking down for sale and sold signs. Um, yeah, so I was still able to stay involved over COVID-19, which I was super happy about. And for a brief period there, I was actually able to come into the office back when restrictions were a little bit lower as far as the workplace is concerned. And I was actually able to shadow the ISAs there, who schedule appointments with clients and agents. And yeah, it was able to keep on chugging through COVID-19, which is something I'm super happy about. This is also when I decided to make this my senior project. So I brought this idea up with Jim and a few others from the brokerage, and they liked the idea. So that is kind of when this idea came to fruition as far as doing a senior project. Yeah. So I got serious and purchased my licensure course to become a realtor in March 2020, about a year ago. And it's a 40-hour course. Took all 40 hours of it. I passed the online test. And after you pass the online test, you have to schedule an additional exam with the state. And that's where I'm at now. That exam should be happening on June 3rd, and hopefully everything goes well from there. So the other big aspect of this project is actually house flips, real estate investment, house rehab. So my dad and I, we purchased 2 distressed properties in Hazel Park in Roseville about 2 years ago, fall of 2019, I believe. And we have been sitting on these properties for a while. The Hazel Park property was in better shape than Roseville, and that's because we had bought it off another investor who had just never finished the project. Um, yeah, so that the Hazel Park property sold in August 2020 um, for more than we thought it would. It was wonderful, but Roseville is still in progress. There's a lot more work to do for Roseville. Like the floors are not even level. In the kitchen, we had to do foundation work to prop up that end of the house that is sinking. It's just a lot more work. Um, yeah. So this is the Hazel Park house, kind of towards the end of the project. All 3 of these pictures are towards the end of the project. You can see the new vinyl floors that we put in. Everything is kind of cleaned up a bit. There is that door that is just laying on the floor, but yeah, this is towards the end of the project. You can see that everything is a lot more clean in here, as opposed to Roseville, which you'll see in a second. And I think it's also worth mentioning at this point that my dad and I did a lot of the work ourselves. Only the big things we really contracted out for these projects. Okay, so here are just a couple more images of the Hazel Park house. There's a shot of the bathroom and also of this back room area. It really was not a very big house. So this is pretty much all of the rooms in there. The only other rooms that aren't pictured are 2 bedrooms, which are fairly small, and you can see the opening to one to the right of the bathroom. So this is Roseville. As you can see, it's a lot more rough. Um, the ceilings did not look good. Like even in this picture that you see now, there's already been work done to the ceilings to make them look better than they looked before. This place was completely chewed out, holes in the walls, broken windows, broken door. There were animals living in it when we acquired it. It was originally this brown color that you see in the first picture on the left, but it has since been painted white, as you can see in the middle picture. And the middle picture actually shows the steps that I had built myself. Yeah, at least the start of them. And yeah, so the third picture is kind of a shot of the inside. So here are just a couple more shots from Roseville. The first picture with the stairs, or the creepy, narrow, very steep stairway that goes up to the second level, which basically just has a crawl space area that there was animals living in, and a creepy green and black bedroom. It's a very unsettling area. The second picture is that a picture of a garage, and the garage is not really structurally sound. Um, you can kind of see light shining through the roof of the garage. Also a mess. Had to do a ton of things to improve the structural integrity of the garage thus far, and it looks nothing like that. It's also been painted and repaneled. So the third picture is the picture of the front of Roseville back when we first got it. It looks like we might have put the first coat of paint on the front left portion of the house, but other than that, it looks just like it did when we first got it. Yeah. As far as next steps are concerned, the biggest thing that's coming up, the biggest hard deadline is obviously June 3rd when I have my state exam. And from there, I'm going to choose to hang my license with Jim Schaefer, because when you get your license as a realtor and not a broker, you need to choose a broker that you hang your license with, basically sell real estate under, when you choose to go into that field. And then eventually I want to move from being a realtor to doing long-term investment and just make that transition gradually over time. That is my long-term plan. Yeah. And now I'd just like to take this time to give a special shout out to everyone at JSA who has made my internships that much easier, more productive, more useful. Shout out to Jim Schaefer, shout out to Josh Barish, shout out Jess Yeager, all from the office, all worked very closely with me and helping this become a reality. And also shout out to Luis Mendez, who helped negotiate the sale of our investment properties and also located those sales. So thank you.
I'm Gina Galligan, and for my senior project, I adapted Hamlet into the genre of film noir. The idea of Hamlet as film noir was an idea I first had when I read Hamlet in 10th grade in Susanna's Tragic Hero class. When we were reading it, I couldn't help but notice that there were a lot of the same themes and general vibes between Hamlet and the genre known as film noir. And I wanted to explore that. I thought it was really funny. And so later in 10th grade, the next semester, I got help from Tari in the form of an independent study to kind of explore the concept and mess around with it. This became a groundwork for my senior project, but if you were to look at what I had originally come up with concepts, it's almost completely different. In 11th grade, I took Kelly's film class, where we talked a lot about genres in film, and one of them was film noir. I wrote an essay for that class about how Hamlet fit that genre and almost was like Shakespeare's version of film noir. And then for my final project in that class, I wrote what I imagined to be the opening scene of Hamlet if it was film noir. And after that, Kelly and I started talking more and decided that that would be my senior project. So this senior project has been a long time coming. My process was a little all over the place. It involved a lot of me doubting myself. Thank goodness for Kelly, because she was there to give me pep talks when I needed them. Because when you're trying to do a senior project in a pandemic, it's surprisingly hard. So I started with what seemed the most logical, which was to reread Hamlet. I had already read it, but at that point it had been 2 years ago, so I wanted to make sure that I remembered everything. And once I had reread Hamlet, I went through and I took the handy-dandy scene notes from the copy of Hamlet that I had, compiled them, and then went through and edited that into what I saw the story as in this new setting. After I had a story outline figured out, some parts surprisingly similar to the original text and some drastically different, I chose what three scenes I wanted to write. At the beginning of the year, when we decided what we wanted the culminating product of my project to be. We had decided on 3 written scenes, one of them to be filmed. Our original idea was to have a full-blown filming of the scene, everyone looking amazing. We were going to do as much to make it movie-like as possible. Due to a pandemic, that changed very fast. So once I had decided the scenes, I wrote rough drafts of them, and then I sent them to my advisor, Kelly, my friend Diego, and Susanna, who taught the class where I read Hamlet, because I wanted 3 very different points of view as to where I was going with it. And they all read it and came back with their thoughts, and I revised my drafts. It was very helpful. I very much recommend, even though it's terrifying, have other people read your writing. It's very helpful. Once I had written the 3 scenes I wanted, which ended up actually being basically the last act of the play, I chose which one I wanted to film. And of course, I had to choose the final scene where everyone dies, because that's just the most fun. So then it came time to film the scene. I needed people, but I also knew that we couldn't go out and film this, in a building and have an actual sword fight and stuff. As fun as that would be, I didn't want to make anyone do something they weren't comfortable with. So instead, we decided to film a read-through. My lovely friends agreed to read for the characters, and we filmed it. It was a whole lot of fun. So that was basically my whole process from beginning to end of the making of these 3 scenes. Now, as I mentioned before, I changed a lot of things about this story. And I changed a lot of things from when I first conceived the idea to when I actually executed the idea for my senior project. If you were to look back, even at the scene I wrote for my film project, it doesn't apply to the story anymore. It's a different version of Hamlet as noir. If you are familiar with the general genre of film noir, then you would know that a lot of the films are narrated by a character telling their point of view of what happened, which I thought fit really well with, spoilers, at the end of Hamlet, Hamlet dies, but before he dies, he tells Horatio to tell his story. And that's basically where the story ends. And so I thought it would work really well if Horatio was the narrator of this story. And so throughout these scenes, there are times where Horatio is giving a narration via voiceover in the story. I also knew that I wanted this to feel like one of those parody episodes in a kids show where for some reason the writers decided that this episode was going to be film noir. That's how I wanted it to feel. So some of the changes I made were to make it more silly or dramatic. So I thought that changing Gertrude to the main villain was more dramatic and ultimately a more satisfying ending for the story I was trying to tell. And also, it's film noir. You gotta have a femme fatale, so Gertrude filled that role very well. Claudius is still a villain. He's just not the main villain anymore. And I also knew that I wanted Horatio and Ophelia to be the main characters, because I don't know about you, but when I read Hamlet, Horatio and Ophelia were the characters I actually cared about. I didn't really care about Hamlet. So I wanted to center it around the characters that I thought were interesting. So instead of Hamlet grappling with his homicidal tendencies, or lack thereof, we have Horatio and Ophelia trying to figure out who murdered King Hamlet, and eventually trying to figure out who murdered Ophelia's father. And then eventually after that, trying to figure out who murdered Ophelia. But that's more into the story. So we followed their story. So a lot of what we see in Hamlet is different than what we would see in this version of the story, because there are times when Hamlet is off being a sad boy, and in those parts of the story we would follow Horatio and Ophelia doing some good old school sleuthing. One of the major changes I made to this story was that Hamlet is actually innocent of the murder of Polonius and is being framed. I felt that because I wanted Ophelia to be one of the main characters, it didn't really make sense for her to be trying to help Hamlet if he murders her father in the story. So I changed that because for Ophelia's story, it worked better. Because once again, while it is still called Hamlet, he's not the main character anymore. And then, unfortunately, I had to delete some characters for my own sanity. So the comic relief duo of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern did not make it into the final idea of the story. Larities basically took their roles because he just kind of fit there. And also Fortinbras doesn't show up, but if you do any research, you'll know that he gets cut from a lot of productions of the show anyway. So that is basically how this went from being a meme to myself to a final project. In a few seconds, you'll get to see the read-through of the final scene with my lovely cast of Horatio being played by Charlotte, Hamlet being played by Lee, Larities being played by Diego, Claudius being played by Ryan. Look out for Claudius's death, it's pretty memorable, and Gertrude being played by my brother Griffin. Oh, and I'm also reading stage directions. I hope you really enjoy it, because I had a lot of fun making it. Especially to the point that if you're paying attention, you'll notice that I am basically giggling the whole way through because of the surreal realization of having my friends reading my writing and like acting it out and us having a good time. It was just really fun, and I am so proud of what we managed to pull together in such quick notice. So yeah, just really big thank you to everyone who helped me with this. It would not exist without like 3 years worth of help from people and just a lot of supportive friends, and of course Kelly, who is my advisor. So without further ado, I present to you the final scene read through of Hamlet.
Hi everyone, I'm Olivia Gandee, and this is my senior project presentation. My senior project is titled Cartarum Socrates Rosa, Resetting a Manga in Ancient Rome. And so basically, in this project, I completed a translation and localization of selections from a manga series from their original Japanese into classical Latin, and reset the story in ancient Rome. And I also completed an analysis of the significance in the story, both as a product of Japan and as a product of ancient Rome. So, before I start talking about the project itself, I want to, give some background. So I've been studying Latin since 8th grade, and I kind of instantly fell in love with it. It's probably my favorite subject. I really just enjoy the structure of the language. It's very pleasant to me. And I really enjoy both, doing translations of ancient Latin texts into English, and also just translating just anything I can find, even in English and such, into Latin just for fun. And I would also plan to study Latin in college if possible. And also in my freshman year, my friend Gina Galligan introduced me to a manga series, obviously the English translation. And I really enjoyed it, and I bought it for myself. And when I was reading it, I noticed that oftentimes the English translators would leave certain parts in the Japanese next to their English translations, so they'd retain some of the Japanese text. And I noticed that some of the English translations that were the same had different Japanese text next to them, and that struck me as odd. So when I watched the anime television series adaptation of it, I listened more closely to see if I could hear the differences in the Japanese. And by doing this for several scenes, I kind of unintentionally started to teach myself the phonetic alphabets of Japanese, hiragana and katakana. And when I realized I was starting to be able to learn it, I tried, a little harder to more intentionally start teaching myself this alphabet. And then I decided to purchase the entire series in its original Japanese form and focus and see if I could teach myself the language itself. And I really wanted to do it, just by myself, just reading it without any dictionaries or online lessons or anything. And I found that I was able to learn a lot of the common vocabulary just through context. And because I'd learned so many little intricacies of grammar through Latin, I was able to learn a lot of the grammar very easily too. But a lot of the grammar was really easy for me. And I realized that it was a lot like Latin, because the nouns declined and such. And the word order was basically the same as well. So, as I said, there were quite a few similarities in the Japanese and Latin languages that I found. And so I did a bit of looking into this because I was curious to see, is this just some random thing I noticed, or is there some significance to this similarity? And for my project for my anthropology class, I decided to research this, and I found that Latin and Japanese are both what are called synthetic languages, as opposed to analytic languages, such as English. And so basically the distinction between synthetic and analytic languages is that synthetic languages tend to inflect the words themselves to give them meaning in a sentence, whereas analytic languages tend to not do this. They tend to just put a bunch of words together and express the meanings of those words through word order. And because synthetic languages do not use word order to give meaning, the word order is typically more fluid and can be manipulated. And you can use that sort of thing for emphasis. For example, you can bring a word to the end of the sentence to build up to it and make it more emphasized. Or you can take an entire phrase and then suddenly negate it at the end. And so a lot of poeticism and interesting nuances are present in Latin and Japanese that are just lost when translated to an analytic language like English. So just to further explain Japanese and Latin word order and synthetic versus analytic languages, I thought I'd give some examples. So first I want to talk about word order. So Latin and Japanese both use the same standard word order. As I said, it can be manipulated, but there's a standard, and that is subject, object, verb, as opposed to English, which uses subject, verb, object. And I've color-coded them, so hopefully when we compare them, you can see. So as you can see, this sentence says, the woman sees the cat. You can see that in English at the bottom. And so you can see in English, first has the subject, then the verb, then the object. And then I have the same sentence translated to Latin and Japanese. So, femina feran videt and onna ga neko o miru. So you can see that those go subject, object, verb instead. So as you can see, the word order is very similar. And in terms of the word order being able to be manipulated and still have the same basic meaning, you can see first the English down at the bottom. If we switch the place of the subject and the object, the woman sees the cat and the cat sees the woman mean completely separate things. The meaning is not retained when you switch the order of the words around because the entire meaning of the words comes from their order. However, in Latin and Japanese, as you can see, even if you switch those words around, you still get the exact same sentence. Both of those sentences say the woman sees the cat because those words are inflected. So it's the words themselves that give them the meaning, not their order. So that's why the word order is so fluid and can be manipulated for emphasis such. So as I was saying, a lot of those nuances are lost in translations to English. And because of that, I often find like translations of Latin and Japanese into English to be really unsatisfying because they just don't capture what the language is really saying and all of the nuances and such. So oftentimes when I would, for example, be like watching an anime or something in Japanese and hear a line that in Japanese had some sort of interesting aspect to it, but that was just lost in English. Oftentimes, just for fun, I would translate in my head to Latin, and sometimes that would lead to me imagining, well, what if this story were set in ancient Rome? And so one day I decided that I would translate parts of the manga with which I taught myself Japanese. It's called Cardcaptor Sakura, into Latin. And originally, this was just in my head, just translating word for word. But soon I realized that this wouldn't work for many reasons. One being that because the story is written in modern Japan, a lot of the words for, like different forms of technology and stuff just wouldn't have existed at all in the classical Latin language. And there are other words also that wouldn't have existed in Latin, such as, Japan, which is a pretty important word for the series. And there were also a lot of instances where, like, the meaning of a name or something would completely lose its significance when translated literally, so I really wanted that to be more adapted in order to keep it. So I decided to revisit my, just imaginings of the story reset in ancient Rome, and to do that, to reset it in ancient Rome and do a localization, i.e. not just a translation, but an adaptation into a new culture. So I had to figure some things out in my process of resetting it. So first of all, I'd realized even in my readings of the original Japanese, really clear references to some ancient cultures being already made. So in the story, the characters use a lot of magic based in ancient traditions and religions. And most of these types of magic are either Western, which typically corresponded to Great Britain in the series, and Eastern, which typically corresponded to China in the series. And a lot of the quote-unquote Great Britain magic was very clearly just ancient Greek religion references. And Similarly, a lot of the China magic was references to Taoism. And so I decided to incorporate these into my translation. And so I thought, well, as these are references to the ancient forms of, magic or whatever, I would just make them references to the contemporaneous forms. So I decided, and this helped me narrow down my time frame because there are only certain points in time in which the story could theoretically actually take place. So it needed to take place sometime after 206 BC, when it is theorized that Taoism first became an organized religion, and before 146 BC, when Greece officially became part of Rome as opposed to its own separate nation. And also the war against Greece that led to its conquer by Rome began around 188 BC, so I wanted it to be before that too. And in 196 BC, Rome granted Greece its independence from Macedonian rule, so I decided to make it after this. So this narrowed it down to just 7 years to work with. So I decided I would go with the year 195 BC. And this affected specifics of the locations I was choosing too. So it became set specifically in the Roman Republic, as opposed to like the Roman Empire. And also something a little bit funny is that in ancient Rome, they did trade with China, but they traded with them in 2 separate locations, and they didn't realize that they were conducting trade with the same people. So they called them completely different nations. So I had to look at various ancient maps and look at the trading routes and such to try to find out at this time, where would China have been? Which of the 2 Chinas was it? So that was interesting. Okay. And there was still a lot in the localization process that I need to plan out before I could start actually translating. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was to maintain the significance of the characters' names, because it was just a really interesting part of the series that I felt would be a cool part to localize as well. So whenever a character's name was like a real Japanese name, just like a common Japanese name, I looked at a list of ancient Roman names and chose one that had a similar meaning. And when it wasn't real, when it was like made up, then I tried to translate it with the same significance. For example, the main character, her name is Sakura in the Japanese, which means cherry blossom, which is a flower that blooms in the spring and is very important to Japanese culture and national identity. And it symbolizes mortality and the fleeting nature of life. And in ancient Rome, the rose is a flower that blooms in the spring, is very important to Roman culture, and it symbolizes mortality and the fleeting nature of life. So I decided to call her Rose, or Rosa in Latin. So that's kind of the process of how I went about naming the characters. And there were also many other obstacles in the translation, such as food, technology, timekeeping, etc. So I had to look at the food they ate in ancient Rome, adapt some of the technology to not be modern anymore, and I also had to look at how the Romans told time, because their measurements of the hours of the day and like the calendar were very different, so I adapted those to be true to ancient Roman timekeeping methods. There were also a lot of customs and cultural references I had to adapt. For example, an important location in the original series is a Shinto shrine associated with the moon. So I made this the temple to Luna, the Roman goddess of the moon, which did exist at the time I'm setting the story on the Aventine Hill. And that's just one example of many changes I had to consider. So as I said before, all this time I'd just been doing all of this research and planning in order to make a translation for fun. But when I started thinking of what I wanted to do for my senior project in, like late junior year or so, I considered doing this. But at first I decided against it because, this is just some project I was doing in my free time for my own enjoyment. I wasn't sure if I was confident enough to use it for my senior project. But then later that year, when I was preparing to take the AP Latin exam, I had to study some parts of the Aeneid, and in one part, they discussed Rome as the gens togata, or the togad nation. And I looked into that, and it turns out that in ancient Rome, the toga, the traditional garment, was a sort of cultural identifier that identified Romans as Romans, and if you were a foreigner residing in Rome, you were not to wear this. This was specifically for Romans only. And I thought, that's really interesting, and it sounds kind of familiar. And then I remembered in that manga that I was thinking of translating, Cardcaptor Sakura, there's a scene where a Japanese character, the protagonist, gives a foreign character a yukata to wear. And it's a really important scene because the yukata, which is a type of kimono, was historically, and to some extent still at the time, also used as a cultural identifier that only Japanese people were allowed to wear and that foreigners were not to wear it under any circumstances. And so I just thought that was really cool. And I thought, if I were to translate that scene, its cultural significance and the emotional impact would translate perfectly. And I started to think, well, wouldn't it be interesting to look at other aspects and to see what their significance would be in Japanese versus Roman culture? And that's when I remembered my Ways of Knowing class I took with Kelly McDowell. And we talked about a form of literary criticism called cultural theory. And it talks about how literature should be analyzed through the culture in which it is produced, as, basically literature doesn't exist in a vacuum. Much of the meaning of a text comes from the culture it's from. So I indeed did decide for my senior project to translate and localize this manga, and to also complete an analysis through cultural theory of the significance of both the original story in Japan and my translation, theoretically, in Rome. So here's an example of the original Japanese page and my translation, just side by side, so you can kind of see what I did. So, a manga is a Japanese graphic novel. So you can see I edited the speech bubbles and put in Latin text where the Japanese text was. So overall in the finished product, there are around 300 or so pages translated, though I did face some challenges. So first challenge was time. I did not do as much analysis as I planned. I was originally planning a full-fledged research paper, but I do have some analysis, and I'm glad that I focused the majority of my time on the translation because I had a lot of fun with it. And then another issue was formatting. I also partly a time constraint issue. I underestimated how much time it would take to format all of the pages of my translation. So there's probably around 100 or so pages that I do have translated, but just didn't make it into the final product because of time. And another issue, just a slight issue, was the availability of resources, in that I had to purchase digital copies of the manga in order to translate them. But it turned out that at the time I decided to do this as my senior project, the publishers decided to gradually re-release them, and about half the series wouldn't come out until after the senior project was over. So I had to focus most of my translation on the first half of the series, and I couldn't do many scenes that occurred later in the series that I wanted to do. So overall from this project, I think I achieved greater fluency in Latin and Japanese, just because I had to immerse myself in the two languages for so much time this year. And I definitely found that in my readings of ancient Latin texts, just because I had to translate so much into Latin, I'm now far more capable of reading, like sight reading. So I can almost just read Latin now, which is really exciting to me. And I also, because of all the research I had to do, now have a far greater understanding of Roman and Japanese customs, daily life, and societal standards from the analysis. And yeah, I definitely plan to keep translating in the future, and I had a lot of fun with this project. So thank you so much for watching my presentation. I hope you found it interesting. And if you are interested in my project and would like to view the final product, you can visit the Roeper Showcase website to find the PDF file of my project. Okay, thank you.
All right. Hi, I'm Diego Garcia. For my senior project, I wrote a television pilot screenplay. It's a continuation of the 2020 movie Birds of Prey. All right. Interior, Santini's office, night. A decadent lounge decorated in gold, crystal, and velvet. A bell tower chimes in the background, and a roaring fire casts light onto the room's only occupant, Raphael Santini. He looks up from his book as the voice of his assistant, Peyton Riley, sounds on the intercom.
Mr. Santini, Mr. Wesker is here.
Come in.
The door opens. Peyton and Arnold Wesker enter.
Arnold, how did the trial go? I hope Judge Kane looked the other way.
Oh yes, Mr. Dunn was found innocent.
Good. Guess we can call off Mr. Drakon then.
Mr. Drakon has a cancellation fee.
Pay it then. Peyton, send Mr. Drakon a fruit basket or something, as an apology for the inconvenience.
Yes, sir, will do.
Good. Make us some drinks, would you, Sugar?
Of course, sir.
Peyton goes to a minibar and begins to make the drinks. Santini continues speaking. Mounted above the bar is a ventriloquist dummy in a glass case. Peyton gives the dummy an uncomfortable look.
Make sure to keep Mr. Drakon's number in my Rolodex, Sugar. We might need him in case anyone else has another slip-up.
Peyton returns
will.
the drinks.
I will. Here you go.
Thank you. Can you put on some music? It's too quiet.
Sure.
Peyton goes to the record player and starts to play Killer Queen by Queen.
Ah, the 70s. What a time. So much easier to get rid of bodies back then.
Well, we owed them a favor, and we were in Michigan. It just happened to work out.
I think I shot someone while listening to this song. Or did someone shoot me?
I shot you. Well, I shot through you to get to that other guy.
Right. Well, it doesn't matter. It's still a good song.
Oh, sure. Great artists.
I never really minded that they were a bunch of fruits.
Do you boys need anything else?
No, I think we're good.
Good night.
Good night.
Peyton exits.
So who are we sending to meet with Maroney's guys tomorrow?
I was thinking you.
Me.
Yeah, Maroney's sending his consigliere. I should send mine.
I don't like the face-to-face shit. I'm much happier sitting here and pulling the strings.
I know. But I trust you to see this deal through.
Fine, but just know that if this goes... Fine, but just know that if this shit goes sideways, it's on you. I'm not a people person.
That's fine. You know what? It's late. You should go. Relax. Get some sleep.
Arnold finishes his drink.
Okay, I'll go. I'll give you a call tomorrow. We can go over everything.
See you around, you old bastard.
Arnold leaves. Santini sips on his cocktail and hums along to the music. A vigilante, Manhunter, carves a hole through the wall and enters behind him. She walks up to him holding a golden glowing spear, which she aims at him.
Raphael Santini.
Santini stumbles up from his chair, grabs a gun, and turns to face the intruder.
Oh, you want me to? Okay. What the fuck?
Santini shoots at Manhunter, whose armor deflects the bullets. Manhunter throws a spear at Santini, impaling him against the wall.
Who are you?
Manhunter walks up to Santini and pulls out her spear.
Justice.
Manhunter swings down her spear and kills Santini, then exits through the window. Footsteps are heard and the door opens as Peyton Riley re-enters the room.
Hey, Mr. Santini? Mr. Santini? Oh, shit.
Hard cut to title, Birds of Prey. Exterior, busy Gotham Street, mid-morning. Cars bustle by on a crowded street. Renee Montoya walks in front of bright neon storefronts and passers-by as she talks on the phone.
Yeah, Ma, I've been keeping busy. Yeah, I've been doing more freelance work. Yeah, Ma, just like Magnum. No, me and Ellen aren't back together. That does not mean I'm going to marry a man. I thought I asked you to drop that. Yeah, I can come home for Christmas. No promises, though.
A newspaper catches Renee's eye and she stops talking.
Oh, holy shit. Sorry, Ma, sorry. I gotta go. See you at Christmas.
Renee grabs the paper and runs off. Interior Birds of Prey office, day. Renee Montoya enters into a rented out office space. The room looks like a fairly typical office space, almost suspiciously normal.
Ladies, come look at this.
Dinah Lance and Helena Bertinelli enter from a back room and take seats at the table. Dinah pours herself a cup of coffee and Helena picks at leftover takeout.
What is it?
Renee tosses the paper under the table.
Scarface Santini is dead.
Dinah picks up the paper and reads it.
Holy shit. Found decapitated with several chest wounds. GCPD has no leads.
Was it a mob hit?
Doubtful. Oracle would have told us if there are any hits. They've been keeping an eye on him.
The bat?
Not his MO. He usually brings in perps, doesn't kill them. Besides, he hasn't been in Gotham since the League started up.
We should look into this. You know, Oracle said there might be a meetup between some of the Maroney and Santini's men tonight. It might not be much, but it's a few more criminals off the street.
If we get one of Santini's guys, we could find out how they're operating post-mortem, see how much Santini's death is affecting their operations.
It's a good idea. All right, you two check out Oracle's lead. I'll do some investigating on my own and see if Oracle knows anything about Santini's death.
Helena and Dinah leave through the room and walk through the door they entered from. Interior Birds of Prey headquarters, day. This room is the Birds' base of operations, their back cave. The exterior office serves as a front.
So what did they say?
Not much. Oracle, not much. Just that they're meeting at Dixon Docks. They don't think there'll be many guys.
Helena loads her quiver and puts crossbow on her back.
Well, that's good. Quick fight, then home in time for dinner.
Montoya pops her head into the room.
I'm gonna snoop around Santini's apartment, see if there's anything I can find. I can find anything useful.
Exterior, straight outside of the office building. Moments later. Montoya gets into her car and puts her phone on the dashboard. She begins driving. She drives for a few minutes past food carts and a few crimes that she doesn't notice. She gets to a stop line and dials a number into her phone. The person on the other side, Oracle, picks up.
Hello, this is Montoya.
What do you need?
Santini's dead. How the fuck did that happen? You said you were keeping an eye on him.
I was. There were no mob hits on him. No disgruntled workers. I had nothing that would lead me to believe he was in danger.
Do you have any idea who did it?
Now? No. I'm gonna see what the GCPD has in their case file.
Montoya's attention is pulled from the call by sounds of multiple cars honking at her. She realizes that the light has turned green and she has not moved.
Shit.
What are you doing?
Detective work, normal stuff.
You aren't a detective anymore.
Shut up.
If you're going to Santini's house, go through the roof. The front entrance is swarming with cops.
How did you...
I know things. It's my job.
Okay. Well, you seem pretty shit at your job because you don't even know why Santini lost his head.
Montoya drives past the cops at Santini's house and parks down the street.
I'll see what the GCPD has, and I'll call you if I get anything.
Oracle hangs up.
Dick.
Straight outside of Santini's home, continuous. Montoya steps out of her car. This area is much nicer Gotham. No graffiti or noticeable Batman-related damages. Montoya ducks behind shrubbery and gets close enough to hear two cops, Jim Gordon and Harvey Bullock, speaking.
Well, whoever it was, they came in through that big hole in the side of the building, sliced right through it.
Alex.
Oh, sliced?
Yeah, I think it could be the same thing that
Harvey drags his finger across his throat.
With Santini, you know.
I get the picture. Anything else important? Anything stolen?
No, this guy just killed him and blew the coop.
Okay. Go back to the office. I'm going to take one last look around.
Harvey gets into his car and leaves as Gordon goes into the building. Montoya checks to see that the coast is clear and quickly climbs up the fire escape. Interior, Santini's office moments later. Montoya climbs into Santini's office through the hole in the wall and looks around. She turns towards the door and is face to face with Jim Gordon.
Ah, Jesus, fuck.
Montoya, you trying to get arrested?
Fuck. I thought I would have more time to get up here.
It's 4 flights of stairs. How old do you think I am?
I didn't think it through. Just shut up.
What are you doing here?
What do you think? One of the most powerful mob bosses in the city just got his head sabered like a fucking champagne cork, and no one knows who did it. I'm looking for clues.
Not like it's going to stop you, but you know this is an active crime scene, right?
I don't remember you ever saying that to the bat.
Gordon pauses to absorb Montoya's comment.
That was different.
No, it's not. This is the same thing, except I'm not wearing a Kevlar bat suit.
Montoya goes to the wall and examines the bullet hole. She looks around the room, trying to figure out where it came from.
How did this bullet end up here?
You think whoever did this deflected it, lodged it in the wall?
Any chance it could have been a direct shot from Santini?
Not likely. A witness says that...
Witness! You got a witness. Can I talk to them?
No.
Why not? Bats always got to question people.
Not in the police station he didn't, and you're not Batman. If you want to find them, go do your own research. He always did.
Fine, I will.
Montoya looks around more. She bends down to look at the scratched floor.
Any idea what did this?
We think the assailant probably used a bladed weapon, spear.
This wasn't just any spear.
Montoya gestures to the hole carved in the wall.
That thing cut through the wall and the window in one clean sweep.
Montoya visualizes the scene in her head. You see Manhunter enter, deflect a bullet with her spear, and kill Santini.
This would have had to be something high-tech. Maybe even alien. Do we know anyone who have had access to something like that and also has a grudge against Santini?
It's not him.
I hope it is. If not, then someone else just found themselves a dangerous new toy.
Montoya stands up and walks towards the hole in the wall.
What are you doing?
I got what I need. See you around, Jim.
Montoya exits through the hole in the wall and begins climbing down the fire escape.
You know, you can take the stairs.
Fuck the stairs!
Exterior warehouse in Dixon Docks, afternoon. Helena and Dinah stand on the roof of a large warehouse. Dinah looks through binoculars while Helena fiddles with a gun.
When do you think they'll be here?
Around sundown.
Sundown? Dinah, it's noon.
I know. This way we can get a layout of the place and get the drop on them.
Dinah hands Helena the binoculars.
Look around and make a plan of attack. You've got a better mind for this kind of shit. I'm gonna grab us lunch from Taco Wiz. What do you want?
Give me the number 2 extra cheese with a cherry cola.
Sounds good.
Dinah climbs down the side of the building. Interior, Montoya's car, afternoon. Montoya closes the car door and dials Oracle.
It's Montoya. I've got some info.
What is it?
This killer's using a high-tech spear. It's real fancy. It cut through a wall. Did you find anything?
I found a witness. Santini's assistant, Peyton Riley.
You know where I can find her?
837 Kramer Street, 11th floor, apartment 8.
Thanks. Can you look into the spear thing? I know it's not much, but if it's what I think it is, we're in trouble.
I'll see what I can do.
Oracle hangs up and Montoya starts driving. Interior, Montoya's car, mid-afternoon. Montoya is stuck in traffic. We see a shot of her GPS that says 56 minutes to destination. Interior, Montoya's car / interior Taco Wiz, split screen. Montoya looks at the surrounding traffic and calls Dinah. Dinah waits in a line in a crowded restaurant. Dinah answers the phone.
Dinah, I found a witness, Santini's assistant. I'm on my way to her apartment. Traffic's bad. I might be a while.
Okay. Helena's keeping watch at the warehouse.
She's keeping watch. Where are you?
Order 86?
Dinah pauses and grabs her order.
I'm not doing this shit on an empty stomach. This is mild, right? My friend's gonna be pissed if it's not.
Okay. Well, get your food and get back up there. Keep me updated.
Uh-huh.
Dinah hangs up. Interior, apartment building lobby, evening. Montoya arrives at the apartment building. She walks through the lobby and then up the stairs. The entire building is dusty and dirty. She reaches the Peyton's door and tries to turn the knob. No luck. She knocks on the door.
Hello, Miss Riley. Are you home?
Go away.
I just want to talk.
How do I know you're not going to kill me?
Peyton, I'm not going to kill you. Just open the door so I can ask you some questions.
I've already answered your damn questions. Now leave me alone.
Peyton, I need to speak with you.
Peyton clocks her gun close enough for the door for Montoya to hear. Montoya ducks and rolls. Bang! Peyton shoots through the door.
God damn it.
Bang, 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 bang. A sudden silence, no more bullets. Peyton is heard frantically shuffling through a box of ammunition. Montoya takes advantage of the pause and kicks down the door. Montoya points her gun at Montoya and cocks it. Montoya quickly tackles her to the ground before she can fire, knocking the gun out of her hand.
Peyton, I need you to calm down and tell me what you saw last night.
Montoya, hand on holster, slowly gets off and backs away from Peyton to give her space.
Last night.
When Santini was killed, what did you see? Who did you see?
Red. They were wearing something red. Maroon, maybe. But something red.
Did you see a weapon?
No. Not really. At least not much. They were holding something. A pole? I couldn't see much. They were already out the hole in the wall by the time I got there.
Mark. Thank you, Peyton. This helps a lot. We're gonna catch this guy.
Montoya stands to leave but turns around.
I don't think he'll come for you, but if he does, he might have with this. Doesn't run out of ammo.
Montoya hands Peyton a knife.
Go for the neck if he gets close enough.
Thank you.
Montoya leaves the apartment. Montoya's car after noon. Montoya shuts the door to her car and her phone starts ringing. She answers.
Oracle?
I found your spear. Your description plus the police files match item 196-5, a weapon stolen from a GCPD evidence locker. It's a piece of evidence weaponry used by a vigilante in the 90s, Manhunter.
I hate it when I'm right.
Montoya hangs up on Oracle before she can say anything else and drives off. Interior, Santini's warehouse on Dixon Docks. 2 cars pull into a warehouse. The building is a large glass roof that shines light in the otherwise unlit interior. Men exit the first car and open up the door of the second. A very uncomfortable-looking Arnold Wesker steps out of the car. In the shadows, Salvatore Moroni lights a cigarette and emerges with his goons.
Sal, what are you doing here? Santini said Tony was coming.
Things have changed. With the new promotion, I felt I should be here. You know, offer my condolences and all.
Thanks.
Scarface was a good man. Well, not good per se, but I respected him. I think he would want his deal to go through as one of his last acts as a living man.
He was never able to tell me the specifics. All I know is that you want this place.
Deal has changed. I'm gonna take this place off your hands, and in exchange, I won't have my associates dust you.
Arnold is stricken with fear as Moroni's men, who he now realizes vastly outnumber his own, aim their guns at him.
Good deal. I'll take it.
Good, you're smart. Now get back in your cars and fuck off.
As Arnold goes to leave, he hears the sound of glass shattering. Everyone looks up and to see Manhunter crashing through the roof. Exterior warehouse in Dixon Docks, moments earlier. Renee Montoya stops her car and gets out. She looks around and identifies the building Helena and Dinah are using to stake out Moroni's gang. She climbs to the roof and finds Helena and Dinah asleep. She shakes them awake.
What the hell is wrong with you two? You're supposed to be watching for Moroni.
Oh, shoot.
Helena rolls over and taps Dinah. Dinah wakes up and scrambles backwards, getting to a fighting position.
Why the fuck were you two asleep?
We had a long day. You woke us up at the crack of dawn, and we've been sitting here watching paint dry in a warehouse ever since.
Helena grabs her binoculars and looks at something in the distance.
Watching paint dry, Dina. Could you not find any way to entertain yourself?
Guys, we've got trouble.
Dinah and Montoya turn to see Manhunter standing on the warehouse roof opposite them. She swings down her spear and crashes to the roof.
What the fuck was that?
That's our killer.
They all turn and begin making their way down the fire escape.
That's the killer?
Yeah, his name is Mark Shaw. He was a retired vigilante, but looks like he's back in the game.
Anything we should know?
Yeah, keep an eye on that spear. It's a Swiss Army knife of unpleasant ways to die.
They run across the lot to the doors of the warehouse. Dinah lets out a sonic screech and blasting down the doors. Interior, Santini's warehouse on Dixon Docks, same time. A large fight is broken out between Manhunter and Maroney's men. Wesker and his men are already peeling out as our heroes enter the building. Wesker stares at the bloodbath as they drive away.
What the fuck?
The sudden entrance of our heroes draws the attention of some of Maroney's goons, who open fire on them. The birds look around at the warehouse and quickly duck behind crates.
Any plans?
Take out the goons. I'll go to the catwalk. You go left. Montoya goes right.
Sounds good.
Fuck it.
She cocks her gun and they split up. Dinah gets up and runs face to face with the gunman from earlier. Thwick! Helena shoots an arrow through his eye and launches a grappling hook up to the catwalk. As the birds fight off Maroney's men, we got a Manhunter, her spear now in the form of an axe, which she used to chop into Maroney's car. Then the top of her spear transformed into a crowbar-like weapon, which she uses to rip off the car door, drawing Montoya's attention.
Oh shit, Maroney.
Manhunter pulls Maroney out of his car and throws him to the ground. She aims her spear at him. The spearhead splits into two, energy crackling between the twin blades as the weapon readies to fire. Bang! Montoya shoots at Manhunter, hitting her shoulder. Manhunter misfires, cutting off Maroney's arm.
Fuck.
Montoya runs towards Manhunter.
Mark, stop. This isn't the right way to do this. You're better than...
Montoya pauses as she gets a closer look at Manhunter. The vigilante is not Mark Shaw, but rather his daughter, Kate Spencer.
Stay back, Renee.
She points a spear at Montoya. Montoya stares at Manhunter in confusion.
He's gone. I'm doing what he couldn't.
Bang! Maroney shoots at Manhunter with his remaining arm. Manhunter gives him an annoyed look, and the back end of her spear shoots a plasma bolt at him, bisecting the mobster. She slams her spear on the ground, launching her into the air and then out of the warehouse. Helena and Dinah gather around Montoya.
Montoya, what the fuck? You froze.
Who was that?
Montoya looks at Maroney and then up at the hole Manhunter left in the ceiling.
Kate.
Cut to black.